Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unplug IT. I'm your host, Stephen Rose. Thanks for joining. This week, lots of news made by the announcements from Jeff Teeper and the OneDrive team on a updated OneDrive client. Now, I was part of the OneDrive team for many years. Um, was incredibly proud of the amazing work that the engineering team did to move us from the groove.exe client to the more modern client, being part of the known folder move and folder backup, getting that feature to parity out to Mac. All of that was great. But after that, there wasn't a whole lot about OneDrive. It just sort of went through a lot of, hey, we're making it better, better, better. And it was so great to see an announcement out about new features, new functionality, and really helping to move that platform to the next level. So I thought it would be fun to bring an old friend of mine, Shari Oswald, to join us. She is a MCT, and I've worked with her and the MCT folks for many years. She is a productivity and an option expert and a whole bunch of other stuff. So, Sherry, take a moment and introduce yourself to everybody.
Hi, I'm Shari Oswald. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer, and they call me Shortcut Sherry because I love keyboard shortcuts and productivity. I've been in this space for about 20 years, working with SharePoint before it was called SharePoint, and of course, OneDrive is built on SharePoint, so that's my first love. And happy to be here
Yeah.
today and share all the new announcements. Very cool stuff coming out.
Absolutely. Yeah, and before it was OneDrive and SharePoint, it was Groove. So that was a whole thing, not the music client, but a whole different Groove. So we're going to cover the new announcements. We're going to talk about some tips and tricks and things that you should know about leveraging and using OneDrive. But before we do any of that, we want to take a quick word from our sponsor. So let's hear it from Power Apps 911.
Thanks, Stephen. Just a reminder to all of you, if you have Office 365, you have the Power Platform. Power Platform is a low-code, no-code platform that lets you build your own apps, workflows, reports, all without writing any of that hard code. If you want to learn more about it, you can go over to training.powerapps911.com. We've got on-demand training, we've got live training, we've got private training, we even have a whole immersive university program, or heck, we'll even do the project for you if you don't want to get your hands too dirty. All right, back over to Stephen.
All right, and we're back. All right. So let's talk about what's new. Before I made up some slides because I thought it'd be great to kind of hit on some of the top announcements. But what really stuck out to you during the announcements yesterday? What were the one or two things that you saw that were either like, it's about time, or wasn't expecting that, or this is going to make my life a lot better, or maybe even it's a close but no cigar?
Oh, the two big ones, I think, were the sharing experience. So being able to share, it seemed to be a moving target. Every time you turn around, the sharing experience is changing. And my peeve for a long time has been the default setting when you share a file is that anyone with a link can access that file. And people don't realize what they're doing. They share a file thinking it's secure, but if that person shares the link with somebody else, it gives them access to the file too. So I think the fact that they're really visiting the security on that and how it's shared is a big step in the right direction. And then, of course, all the new stuff with the AI that's coming out soon. Pretty cool. I like that too.
Yeah. Well, I think with sharing, it's been visible, but the problem is one of two things. Either companies don't allow sharing or only allow sharing internal, so you didn't have to share with anybody and couldn't share anything external, or didn't know what they were doing. Anyone would come up as a default and they weren't really trained. Hi, here's how you make this only to certain people, or require a passcode, or require, any one of these things, permissions, timeout, how long they have it for. It was always kind of hidden. And I agree. And that makes it a little bit difficult to use. So, um, I'm going to go to a deck and we'll bring that up, which will list all the announcements, and let's go through and let's talk about it. See what you think and have you weigh in on some of these, Sherry. Okay.
Love it.
All right. So this was the announcement. This is stuff that's coming to the product. If you can sign into a preview, or you're going to start to see in the next few months. So let's go through these one at a time. The first is what we're calling OneDrive Home. So this is a whole new redesigned experience where they're taking that for you, which is AI powered, and you kind of get right now during the Office app that will tell you, hey, here's what's going on, as well as all your recent. So that part isn't any different. What they have now done is done a add new, and I like this. You can get to the OneDrive directory that you want to be in, and you can upload an existing file or folder from your machine or create a new file or folder right from there. So if you think about it, you go into Word, you create something, you then go to save, and then you pick the OneDrive folder where you want it to sit. Now you're kind of doing it in reverse. So, Sherry, as a trainer, which is easier for folks, do you think? Is it, or do you think it's going to be different for different people with a new way to create documents and store them in OneDrive?
I think the best thing about this is it's meeting people where they work and how they work. So if they want to work from Word or they want to work from OneDrive, they can work from either one and they get the similar experience. In Word, the desktop version, when you say new file, you get an opportunity to pick a template. There are thousands of templates out there that I think are one of the best kept secrets of Office. And people don't know that they're there. They don't know to leverage them. Well, now it's actually surfacing directly in OneDrive as well. So you do a new Word document and you're presented with options for templates you get a preview of them. You can kind of look at them and see if they're going to meet your need. You can back out of it and pick something else, or you can start from scratch. So that's for Word, Excel, PowerPoint. All of those templates are available now in the web. I think that's awesome.
Awesome. Favorites, so you can favorite files in OneDrive or across any of your Microsoft 365 apps. That's all of your web apps. People, you can now see that there. Filter meetings. I like this one. Browse by meetings, which gives you a view so you can see what was shared in various meetings and look back on that. So if you could say, hey, I had a meeting last week, or I was out of town and I missed some meetings, by simply clicking that, you'll see what was shared in there. And quick access, which navigates you to SharePoint sites that you frequently work out of. So, what do you think is going to be the biggest game changer with this new design for most folks? And again, looking at it as someone who's training people all the time, what is going to be the one feature that you're going to say, if you use this, this is going to make your life better?
I think it's the shared and favorites, keeping in mind that everything is security trimmed in Office 365. So you can't find or locate things that you don't have the permission to see. And maybe that's
Right.
something somebody shared with you from their OneDrive, or something that was in a SharePoint site where you're collaborating, or in your Microsoft Teams, which underneath Teams is the SharePoint site that's hosting all the documentation. And being able to find that content no matter where you are, from basically your documentation home is now OneDrive Home. It's not just, I don't have to go to SharePoint to look for things. I don't have to go to Shared to look for things. It's just going to surface for me. And being able to
Right.
bookmark those, because I'm thinking of my users that come in and their computers completely littered with their files on their desktop. And I'm like, do you know how vulnerable you are? Your favorite, most
Right.
important things are on your desktop. Well,
Right.
now, regardless of if it's mine or yours or somebody else's, you can favorite them. And basically, it's like that little dashboard of your favorite things and stuff you use all the time.
Love it. All right. Then they talk about other features that are going to be coming soon. So let's take at some of those. And I think one of the biggest was that we'll now see OneDrive inside of Teams and inside of Outlook as a choice, which can make it a lot easier to find what you're looking for. So in in Outlook, you would have to go and search for a file and do that. Now you can go into the OneDrive portion and just click and say, share this. And you're already in Outlook. You're not having to leave the Chrome. I think, especially for folks that are working more web based, this becomes a pretty big feature for them. So this was the first of the two. And then the one that I'm excited about is open an app.
Me too.
What that is if you're in Teams and you go to open something, it opens up inside of Teams within the Teams Chrome. It doesn't always have all the same features and functionality. So many people just choose to open up in the desktop app. And this will allow you to do that, to actually open up into the OneDrive app. So any thoughts on the integration now with Teams and Outlook and how that will change things for folks?
Absolutely. Because again, let's meet them where they're working, and having that availability of my content in Outlook. The biggest one for Outlook for me, and I think for most people, is I want to attach a file that I've been working on. I don't want to have to download it. And often when I'm trying to send it to somebody who's external to me, I can't just attach it. I have to download it and then attach it, because otherwise it just sends them a link. And if I don't have external access turned on, I'm not able to share that file from where it lives. And I think this is going to make that a whole lot easier, especially in that Outlook piece. And Teams as well, same thing. I'm hoping that that's going to be a bit easier to share it, again, depending on whether external access is turned on or not.
Right.
The opening
Great.
app, I'm with you on that one. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Yeah,
it's
I
a
think that'll
two-step
be good.
process. Yeah. I don't have
Right.
to open it and then open it again. I can just open it. Plus, there's certain files that aren't compatible with the web to be able to edit them. And also things like macro-enabled Excel files that you can host in the web, but they cannot be opened in the browser. They have to be
Correct.
opened in a SharePoint library. You can change the setting for the default, but file by file, you can't. And OneDrive
Correct.
hosted content,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
It's a really good point. I didn't think about that, but that's excellent. And then they're bringing some media views. They're doing what Google's done for years, and they're going to bring it to OneDrive, which is intelligent photos and videos and improved search for people with natural language, show all pictures of blank at the beach, and you'll be able to bring those up and all that. And that's just long overdue. I'm glad to see them finally doing it and taking a page out of the Google Photos book and even out of Apple's book on that. Apple has a lot of that where I can do that. So I think this is good for people who are using OneDrive for phone backup. I think this is a great way to go. The big thing is some of the security policies. And again, I think some of these are long overdue. The big highlight was being able to move OneDrive accounts across tenants. I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's great. That was super important and something that's been very frustrating to folks. But the new restricted access control, I think, is interesting. I want to read what it says in the blog because I don't want to get it wrong. It says, as users share files, they give others inside or outside of your organization access to those files. Restricted access control policy for OneDrive as an admin lets you block people from accessing shared files in specific OneDrive accounts by limiting OneDrive access to members of a specific security group. So if you discover that people have access to certain confidential files, you can fine-tune access so only users in a specific security group have access. And that's great. That way you could say HR stuff. I have a security group for HR, OneDrive files. They can share them freely with other members of HR, but not with people outside of that HR group in any way, shape, or form. And that's been difficult, is to match up some of the security policies and security groups with who has permission for things. You had to start to create additional groups, and this lets you do it within your Active Directory structure. What are your thoughts there on that? Because I'm sure you've had a lot of frustration. And of course, as you're teaching end users, it's hard for them to understand that a lot of these decisions are made by admins. This kind of clears it up a bit more, makes it easier for admins to make policies, I think, that make sense for end users. All right, so lots of security policies, granular control access, restricted controls, the moving OneDrive accounts across tenants, which has been long overdue for a long time. But I like these new restricted access control. This is where IT can say, hey, based on a Azure security group, Azure AD security group, I can say HR can only share files, this whole group of files, only with people from the C-level execs in HR. It cannot be shared with anyone else, no matter what their default policies are outside of that. So I think this is great. You can set it for specific groups. You pair that up with the block download policy. So you can set it for sites, not at an organizational unit. So which files are browse only, which ones people have access to. Again, I think this is something long overdue. And one of the big things that we find is that end users often don't understand why they don't have access to be able to share something or do something. And that comes from IT. And sometimes IT doesn't understand that it's set for least permissive by default and people can share anything anywhere. So first of all, what do you think of these features and how do you explain this to end users when they ask you, oh yeah, we can't do that within my company, and they ask why?
I think it's a double-edged sword. I think it's going to prevent people from doing bad things inadvertently, which is good. but it's also going to prevent them from being productive because things are going to be blocked and it's not under their control anymore what they share and they don't share. Somebody at another level that doesn't do their job is making decisions for what they need to share. And so I think there's got to be some more collaboration between the different work groups to make sure that you're enabling people and not blocking them from doing what they need to do. But I like some of the proactive error messages because I know personally I've received external sharing links and then I have to put in a passcode. Well, I don't get the
Right.
email that tells me what the passcode is. It's very frustrating when you're just trying to get your work done and you're waiting for some process to
Yeah.
happen in the background. But, them saying, this is going to an external user and they're going to, it lets you know as you share it.
Right.
These are some of the limitations so that you can get in front of that with the person that you're sharing it with. I think that's going to be helpful. But yeah,
I
for me,
agree.
it's a double-edged. I got to see it in play.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then what's in all this final two, the collaboration insights and the data export for OneDrive, saying collaboration insights allows IT to say, hey, this person has been sharing a lot of files externally. We should take a look at this. And, it's looking for patterns across sharing. Where there's lots of little files or an excess of confidential files, et cetera. I'm interested to learn more about this feature and how the collaboration insights is going to work and if it's part of any of the Viva or any of those sort of aspects. And a data export for OneDrive Sync is great for those people who are not using Microsoft tools, but maybe using Confluence or Cloud or ServiceNow, et cetera, where they can put those reports into the same tool that they're using across all of the different products. So I think that that's great. And of course, CoPilot is the thing. So they will be bringing CoPilot to OneDrive. So, Sherry, what are your thoughts on Copilot? I'm still a little mixed because a lot of people feel it's this I'm going to turn it on and it's going to change my life and do some really great, amazing things. And I think people are forgetting that A, it's expensive. You're looking at $30 to $40 a user on top of your E3 or E5. You have to have 60 users minimum signed up for Copilot, but you got to go in and go clean house. There's some great stuff. We chatted with Caruana in our last episode and talked about all the things you need to do to prepare for Copilot around security, governance, etc. And now we're adding OneDrive to the mix. So, what are your thoughts kind of on Copilot as a whole? Is this something you want to see people jump into quickly? You feel it's great. You want them to maybe take a little bit of time and see where it goes. What are your thoughts?
I'm cautiously optimistic about Copilot, but I'm with you. There's a lot to it, and the cost for me, everything is a trade-off of time or money. So
Right.
if it saves people time, then it's worth the money. But if it's going to be an inhibitor, then probably not a great choice. But when you're working with people, you have to train Copilot. You can't just like randomly ask for what you
Right.
want. Eventually, it has to learn, and it's learning as it goes. And of course, Skynet always kind of comes into my head. It's like, when is it going to go? When is it going to become sentient? But I'm hoping people
Right.
use it as a tool and not a crutch, because instead of being proactive and creating a good architecture behind the scenes, they just kind of make another big document dump that people can't find anything in, and they don't care what they say because Copilot will find it for me. That kind of thing.
Mm.
I'm concerned that the architecture is going to suffer because that was the original SharePoint was just a huge document dump. People couldn't find anything, and you have to have good architecture in order for it to work correctly.
No, absolutely. And I think the problem is because there are so many different work style, you have older generations that still rely on email as their place to store all their data and information. You have younger generations that are using chat and Slack and Teams, et cetera, as their place to store everything. Trying to find everything across SharePoint and OneDrive and Teams and all the stuff that we're storing in Microsoft 365, plus email, plus everything else, having a single way to search through all that to find insights, to find patterns, to bring that information to is important to us. But I think you hit the nail on the head that if you don't have structure as well as security and governance set up, because it's important to understand what people in one country can access versus another, if you're multinational, et cetera, GDPR rules, et cetera, I think you run into some really interesting scenarios that people who roll this out quickly are going to have to take a few steps back after they do, because some of this can come back and bite them in the butt. So I agree. I think double edged sword is exactly the way to put it.
Yeah,
So
and
let's take a
Teams,
step back.
saw that with
Oh,
Teams,
no,
right?
go
We
ahead.
saw Teams sprawl,
Yeah,
when everybody was
we're
creating
still
a
seeing
team.
team
You get
sprawl.
a team, everybody gets a team, and you had thousands of teams for like hundreds of people.
Yeah.
It comes down to planning and architecture and creating a workspace that's usable for everybody.
And I think the important word there is planning. It's not just putting it out. I think we all saw that with, when COVID hit and we got rid of Skype for Business, gave everybody Teams, didn't do a great job of training people on Teams,
Mhm.
and IT and owner leadership was wondering, why is everybody using Teams the same way they use Skype for Business? They're just using it for chat and calling. They're not using it for collaboration because they were not taught how to use it for collaboration. You can't take
Right.
people that have been using email for collaboration and say, oh, this is new and different. Go figure it out and it'll make life better because Microsoft said it will. And there's a lot more to it than that. Yes, it can, but there's all of this other stuff that has to be done in place. So I think learn from what you learned when you did Teams and what you would do differently if you're looking at Copilot and making that investment, because the investment you need to make for Copilot is financially considerably more than you did for Teams, unless you did a ton of Teams rooms and things like that. So I think it's going to be interesting. Now,
Yeah, and,
speaking
and
of
now you got.
OneDrive,
Go ahead. I
no, no,
think you're
go ahead.
going where
No,
I
no,
was
no,
going.
no, no,
Go
no,
ahead.
no, go ahead.
Yeah, it's the what goes where. The what goes where
Yes,
question always comes back to, what goes
perfect.
in Teams, what
So
goes in OneDrive. Go ahead.
let's talk about that because, I've seen it. People try to simplify it as much as saying my work goes in OneDrive and our work goes in SharePoint. Anything I'm working on stays in OneDrive, and then I'll drop it into SharePoint, and that becomes we. Then it became, well, I'll use OneDrive for my stuff, then Teams for we. But yet people are still sending copies of files, people, via Outlook, and having 5 or 6 different copies, or they have a OneDrive copy and a Teams copy and this and that. So, first of all, if somebody says, when do I use Outlook or OneDrive or Teams or SharePoint? How do you answer? Ooh, sorry.
That's okay. Yeah.
Been a long day.
I know, I hear that. No, I'm
How do
with
you
you.
answer that?
I my co- the me versus we files to me is oversimplified because it depends, just like everything in
Mhm.
Microsoft 365. But yes, the me files always kind of equate it to the OneDrive is your file cabinet that sits underneath your desk. You have the control over that. You decide how it's organized. You decide who you share things and take away access to. But those should not be long-term business critical documentation, should not be in your OneDrive. If you wouldn't put it in the box and walk away, if you were to change departments
Right.
or jobs, then you shouldn't have it in your OneDrive. Not to say you shouldn't have things there, like you and I might be working on something real quick and I don't need the whole peanut gallery involved in it.
Sure.
Peer to peer, small group collaborations that are short term.
Yeah.
And then SharePoint are like those file cabinets are out in the hallway. They're designated to a specific group or team. They all have keys to the cabinet, but somebody else decides how it's organized. And hopefully, as a group, you collaborate on that. And Teams, nothing actually lives in Teams. When you're working in Teams in SharePoint, that's the collaborative piece. SharePoint
Right.
files, Teams supports their files are supported in SharePoint. Chat files, this is the big epiphany moment for a
Yeah.
lot of people. Chat, when you
Chat
share in
chat is where
chat, it's in
things
OneDrive.
that's where things go belly up, is with chat. So hang on, before you say, let me just explain something really quick, and people don't get this. So if I'm working on a project with people in a team, I will work on a document and I will upload it to the team. From that point on, I'm going to work on the version in the team, not the version that's on my machine, because now there's 2 of them. There's the original and there is the new version that is inside of Teams.
And they don't synchronize, which is a lot of people
Right.
think,
And
oh,
they
if I
don't
upload it,
synchronize.
it keeps a copy of it. It's not a sync.
Right. So you're done with that one. The problem that people make is they don't see a difference between a team and chat. So they upload a document to chat thinking it's just like sending it via a link in email to everybody, where you're not sending it. People are still working on your original version in OneDrive. And now chat makes a local copy of it into Teams. And now you have 2 versions. You're working on one. They're all working on another one, the one that's in the team, and things don't come together. So, what is your advice around that? And what do you tell folks? Because that's where things get messed up, is not understanding that as soon as you add something to a team, there's now a version in that team, and that's now the new truth, not the one you were working on. Different from email with cloud files.
Yeah, don't share it, move it. Don't use the move option. If let's say you and I are working on something, and now I want to put it in the team, I'm not going to keep that original copy. I'm going to move the one that I have, and it keeps the versioning. So you have that available to if you ever had to revert it back. So that's the best thing. Don't download and upload, because now you've got a snapshot of a copy in the new library.
Right.
Where if you move it, you still get the version history, which is great. But
Right.
I think,
and then you can always go into files, move it to files, and then grab the link and then drop that into the conversation or chat. Hi, here's the template for whatever we're working on. You do it in the team or you do it in the chat, but it's still within that team and it can be found, and that makes a lot more sense. So yes, don't do that. In Outlook, don't send copies of files unless they're going external and you don't want people to work on it. You're just sending it to keep it. That's fine. You should be using a share link or cloud file. Now Outlook is making it easier by simply just doing a backslash, typing in the name of the file, and it drops it right in and adds the link. And when somebody clicks it, they're opening the file from your OneDrive, or if they're part of the team, from the team.
unless they're external and you don't have external sharing turn on. And yeah.
Right.
So when you said Outlook, I said the only time I would attach a file in Outlook is if it was an external person. Internal should always be a link to a
I did a
SharePoint or
signature
OneDrive.
for my bank and they want me to send a copy back or something like that. And I would do that, like, hi, here's the signed W-9 or something like that. I don't need a copy. They send it. I'm done. Yeah. Otherwise, you should not be sharing files via that, but you can share a link via that. And for a lot of people, well, here's another good question. How do you explain to end users who have been used to attaching files, but not realizing now when they attach a file that they're actually attaching a link if it's been turned on that way? How do you explain that to folks? How do you do it so that they understand it? That
I
I'm
make them
not
look at
actually attaching a physical file. I'm attaching a link. Yeah.
I make them look at the link. It's like, look at what you're doing. Don't just go on autopilot. It actually
Right.
shows you that you're sharing a link, and it lets you control the link. You know, how are you sharing this? Can you block it from them editing it? Can they just read it? Can they just give you feedback? You can block them from downloading it. You can put in a expiration date, so they beyond a certain time they can't download it. And so actually look at the link that you're creating and what you're doing in that link, I think is really important. That's the first thing whenever I'm teaching OneDrive and or SharePoint classes. That's exactly what I like. Look at what you're doing. Don't just go on autopilot.
All right. So, kind of wrapping things up for OneDrive, what are your top 3 recommendations for people using OneDrive today? And then I'll give my top 3. So what we'll go back and forth. So what is your number 1 recommendation if you have OneDrive? What should you be doing?
Throw away the trash. Go through and get rid of the things that you don't need, because it slows down your search. It slows down your productivity. You know, just like you would go in your house and you periodically clean things out, the same thing in your OneDrive. Get rid of stuff. I've done a lot of migrations in the last year or so, and it's like I'm moving the potluck sign up list from 1997. We don't need to keep those things. Throw them away.
That is a good one.
Organize.
All right. Well, hang
Organize.
on. Now we'll go back and forth
Okay.
here. Here's mine.
All right,
Okay.
I
So
like
my
that
first
better.
one is turn on the folder backup. This is huge. I have it turned on for desktop documents and photos. And what I love is I work across 2 or 3 different PCs, 2 or 3 different Macs, and I can pick up and work across any of my devices because I'm using that folder backup. When I go to Mac and I click on the desktop folder, everything on my PC desktop is there. And when I open up my Surface Go, when I've been working on my desktop, everything that I was doing is right there. And I never have to worry. You can hand me a machine, or if God forbid all my machines got lost, I can go to a browser or my phone or my iPad or an Android tablet and pick up right where I left off. This allows my world to follow me and to know that my world is online, secure, and accessible. So the folder backup, known folder move for Mac and PC is huge. So that is my number 1. All right, your number 2.
Well, to reinforce your number 1, that's because your My Documents, your the documents, the pictures, and the desktop are your 3 folders that go wherever you go, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it basically moves those to the cloud, and the only way that you know it is by seeing the little cloud icon that tells you if it's in the cloud local. and that's it. But it's all right there, and it's accessible from everywhere. It's great. All right, your number 2.
Organize your stuff and think of the old, if you were in a file cabinet, we're limited to a drawer, a hanging file, and a manila folder. If you had to move things back into a paper world, everything in a web environment should be within 3 clicks. That's the usability standard. So if you think about that, in the paper world, we had a drawer, a hanging file, and a penaflex or a manila folder. You wouldn't have a manila folder inside a manila folder inside a manila folder. So reorganize your stuff so you can get to it within 3 clicks.
I like that. One of the things I'm excited about with the new Outlook is color coding. I'm huge on color coding. All of my different appointments on my calendar are color coded, so I know what's an in-person meeting versus virtual, versus I can move this to a different day, versus this has to happen at this day. And it's something that I like. The new Teams now has colored folders, and I'm super happy to see it coming to OneDrive. I just think it will make things much easier, and it gives people a moment of pause if they see a red folder, or why is this folder red, or things like that. So I think continuing with that, I think, is a great way just at a glance to make organization better. All right, your final and number 3.
And 100% agree with you on those colored folders. Probably my third one is to use the selective sync. Bring things onto your local device, just in case you happen to lose connection to the internet and you don't have access to your content. Being able to have that content that you need that's critical, and you can add or remove whatever you need at any given time. If you're working on a specific project, you sync it now, and then you just leave it back on the server. What I love about what's coming on OneDrive now is you can control from the browser now. You don't have to go into the desktop to decide which files you keep offline. And I think that was that to me was a big one. It's like, because most people don't know how to do that in Windows.
Right. And that was another big announcement, is offline files. That's something that Mark Cashman and I talked about in List. But for those of you who have been saying, I really want to use the browser more, this is going to be the game changer, because you'll be able to get into your OneDrive files and work with them while they are offline, while you don't have an internet connection. And then as soon as you do, those things will sync. And that's been the problem, is having to think ahead of time. What do I need to have local on my desktop, this and that? But through the browser, you have the cached versions that are there and that you can start to work with. So I think this is going to help people who have been wanting to drop the desktop apps and move more to a browser-based world. I think this is really going to help, and we're seeing the apps move up. Shari, this was awesome. How do people find out more about you, or reach out to you, or connect with you, or hire you, or any of the wonderful things that they may want to do for you or with you?
I'm on shortcutshare.com is my website. My company is Power Up Learning, so poweruplearning.com. And we specialize in change management, adoption, and we call it learning. Training to me is kind of like, you can train a dog to repeat what you do, but what I really want is for people to learn and incorporate and be empowered by their technology, and not just learn click steps. So that's always our goal. So we try and figure out what are the things that we can make easier in your life. And as Shortcut Shari, it's my job to make your job easier.
Awesome. And I've known you now for 12, 13 years, and you are so incredibly involved with the Microsoft Certified Trainer MCT community, with the community in general. You are someone who people can reach out to across any social media. You'll get back to them, respond. You are super engaged with the community. I know I appreciate it. You always make time for folks. So I will tell you, if you need help, you need hints, you have a question, reach out to Shari, and she will absolutely get back with you. I will guarantee that 100%. So thank you for being such a huge community advocate, customer advocate, and all the good stuff you do, and for sharing all your insights today. I think it's really helping folks. But the bottom line is, if you have not played with OneDrive, if you're still on Box or Dropbox or Google Drive, or God forbid, all you're using is just the Apple Share Cloud Share product, check out OneDrive. You're already paying for it, and it is super powerful. It's great, and I guarantee it's going to do what you're paying for from these other companies. And if there is something missing, Jeff and his team are always very open to hearing it. Same with Jason Moore and all the rest of the folks. So any final words before we sign off here, Shari?
No, I just want to say thank you very much for having me. It's always a pleasure to work with you, and I can't wait till we can hang out together in person again.
I agree. Well, I am going to send you one of these. Hang on.
Uh-oh. I already have the Steven socks.
Oh, no. Yeah, that's from the old show, but now I have cool new stickers, and I have these.
Oh, wow. I love that. That's perfect. Perfect.
with the name of the show. So I will send you one of the cool new mugs, which will at least 3 to 4 times a day keep you from having to say that. And for those of you who want one of those mugs, write me. Tell me why you deserve one of those mugs. Have you been retweeting what I've been twittering and Xing, and or have you watched the shows or had ideas or pitched in? And if you have some good stuff, you can catch me at Stephen L. Rose on Twitter. Maybe I'll send you one of those. But Sherry, you're definitely getting some and some of the new stickers. Thanks again for joining. Awesome. Thanks, everybody else. This has been Stephen Rose from Unplug IT. Thanks for joining. We'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye-bye.